Today, the Matt Walsh Show, Joe Biden delivered a commencement speech over the weekend where he inspired the graduates by telling them that America hates them, white people are out to kill them, and democracy is a, quote, trail of broken promises. The speech was everything we've come to expect from Biden: dour, depressing, unpatriotic, confused, and most of all, false. Also, music mogul Sean Diddy Combs is caught on camera brutally assaulting his girlfriend, and a former Kansas City Chiefs cheerleader goes viral with videos attacking Harrison Butker. All of that and more today on the Matt Walsh Show. Spring is here, which means spring cleaning, warmer weather, and the flowers and leaves starting to bloom. With all the changes happening outside right now, there's no better time than now to start shopping for life insurance with Policy Genius as part of your financial planning for the year. Getting life insurance today means that you'll have peace of mind so that if something were to happen to you, your family can cover expenses while getting back on their feet. Luckily, Policy Genius helps you compare your options from top companies, and their team of licensed experts is on hand to help talk you through it. Policy Genius has licensed, award-winning agents and technology that makes it easy to compare life insurance quotes from America's top insurers in just a few clicks to find your lowest price. Even if you already have a life insurance policy through work, it may not offer enough protections for your family's needs, and it may not follow you if you leave your job. With Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million of coverage. Some options offer same-day approval and avoid unnecessary medical exams. Policy Genius works for you, not the insurance companies. That means they don't have the incentive to recommend one insurer over another. Save time and money and provide your family with a financial safety net using Policy Genius. Head to policygenius.com/Walsh to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you can save. That's policygenius.com/Walsh. It's been several days now, but the outrage mob is still having conniptions over a speech given by a Catholic NFL kicker at a Catholic school in which he dared to suggest that some women want to be mothers. The horror. And that was too much for the left and certainly for most media outlets who have spent the last several days panicking and in many cases lying about what Harrison Butker said. But if we were a sane country, there's another commencement speech that would be attracting considerably more negative attention. It was delivered yesterday by Joe Biden at Morehouse College, the historically black school in Atlanta. In the span of about 30 minutes, Joe Biden did everything they're falsely accusing Harrison Butker of doing, and then some. Biden actually did demean and insult millions of Americans very clearly. He also deliberately stoked hatred and lied repeatedly with the apparent goal of dividing this country even more than it's already divided. And of course, all of this is more concerning than anything Harrison Butker could possibly say, because Harrison Butker is a football player and Joe Biden, at least nominally, is the president of the United States. What he says reflects how the Democratic Party intends to govern if they remain in power. And that said, as you'd expect, Joe Biden didn't resemble the President of the United States at any point during the ceremony. He looked more like a half-conscious, decaying Muppet on the stage, particularly as other speakers were delivering their remarks. Take a look at Biden's face as the Morehouse valedictorian spoke, for example. Watch.
Nay, as a human being, to call for an immediate and permanent ceasefire in the Gaza Strip.
So he looks like he's dying. He's like literally dying right in front of us. And to be fair to Biden, though, the speech from the Morehouse valedictorian wasn't easy to listen to. Quote, "It is my stance as a Morehouse man, nay, as a human being, to call for an immediate and permanent ceasefire in the Gaza Strip." Yes, he actually uses the word nay as if he's delivering an address in the front of the House of Commons in the 18th century and not a random college in Atlanta with an average SAT score just north of 1,000. There's no self-awareness whatsoever. Who wouldn't squint in pain at least a little bit in the face of that kind of pretentiousness? And in what universe would the Morehouse College valedictorian, during his address at graduation, think that he can call for a ceasefire in any conflict outside of maybe a food fight in the school cafeteria? Of course, being realistic, Joe Biden wasn't squinting in pain so much as confusion. So he claps at the end of the remarks, presumably because everybody else was clapping. Every time Biden goes out in public, we're reminded that he's barely hanging on. He's certainly not governing the country right now. And as if to underscore that point, Biden began his commencement speech with one of his trademarks. He made an outlandish claim that's clearly false. Watch.
I got more Morehouse men in the White House telling me what to do than I know what to do. You all think I'm kidding, don't you? You know I'm not. And it's the best thing that's happened to me.
Now, as a general rule, when Joe Biden says, I'm not kidding, he actually does mean it. He's not kidding, he's lying. There is no council of insightful Morehouse College graduates in the White House telling Joe Biden what to do. And there shouldn't be, by the way. In fact, there don't appear to be any high-ranking Morehouse grads anywhere in the Biden administration, as far as I can tell. There are Duke grads like the White House Chief of Staff, Columbia grads like the press secretary, Yale grads like the National Security Advisor, Oxford grads like the CIA director. But Morehouse graduates, nay, Morehouse men, don't appear to be well represented in the White House at all. This is a recurring theme in Biden's career, where he pretends to be an everyman populist, while, in fact, keeping the commoners as far away from himself as possible. It's the same scam Barack Obama pulled, only Biden isn't remotely subtle about it because, well, his brain has disintegrated. But you knew that already. The bigger issue on Sunday were Joe Biden's prepared remarks, because these prepared remarks were written by the people who actually run the government. In particular, Biden's team thought that this clip, which we'll play in a second, from his speech was so profound that they proudly posted it to his Twitter page. This was the clip that they wanted everyone to see. This was the excerpt from the 30-minute speech that the White House felt really underscored the president's message. Watch.
You started college just as George Floyd was murdered, and there was a reckoning on race. It's natural to wonder if democracy you hear about actually works for you. What is democracy? If black men are being killed in the street, what is democracy? The trail of broken promises still leave black communities behind. What is democracy? You have to be 10 times better than anyone else to get a fair shot. And most of all, what does it mean, as we've heard before, to be a black man who loves his country, even if it doesn't love him back in equal measure? When I sit behind the Resolute desk in the Oval Office, in front of the fireplace across from my desk, I have two busts, one of Dr. King, one of Bobby Kennedy. I often find myself looking at those busts, making decisions. Ask myself, are we living up to what we say we are as a nation? To end racism and poverty? To deliver jobs and justice, to restore our leadership in the world?
So it is indeed a profound clip, as I said, but not in the way the White House thinks. It's actually a profound illustration of what our leadership has become. The President of the United States stood in front of young adults who had just graduated college and angrily ranted about how America hates them and white people are out to kill them, and how democracy is a, quote, trail of broken promises. Biden's message, as always, was depressing, demoralizing, unpatriotic, and most of all, false. So he says George Floyd was murdered. Well, no, he wasn't. George Floyd was one of a rapidly growing number of black men who died of a drug overdose in 2020. You rarely hear it mentioned. Biden certainly didn't talk about it at Morehouse, but overdose deaths among blacks jumped by nearly 50% that year. The overdose epidemic is a real crisis that is killing thousands and thousands of Americans of every race, but our political leaders can't even pretend to care about it. But Biden certainly can't pretend. Then again, he can't really do anything. And rather than address that problem in any way, Democrats like Joe Biden decided to blame police officers. In fact, in their platform in 2020, the DNC claimed that millions of people have good reason to fear being murdered by police officers. So the police pulled out of black communities, resulting in even more crime and death. And Biden doubled down on this approach at Morehouse on Sunday. He said that black men are being killed in the streets, which is true in a sense, but Biden's implication is a lie because he wants us to believe that black men are being killed by white people, including all those white supremacist police officers. But the truth is the opposite. Nearly all black victims are killed by other black people, and a black person is far more likely to kill a white person than the reverse. Last year, for example, 86 black people were murdered by whites, but the number of whites who were killed by black assailants was more than 5 times higher at 488. And this is data that holds up year after year. Here's a chart that the National Conservative has prepared on this. It shows the number of interracial homicides so far this year. And what do you notice? Well, black on white crimes dominate the chart, followed by Latino on white, and then black on Latino crimes. You have to willfully ignore all available evidence to come to the conclusion that white supremacy is the problem here. But willfully ignoring all available evidence was a theme of Biden's speech. Joe Biden went on to say that the black community is being left behind by broken promises. Well, what broken promises exactly? Democrats have run many major cities in this country for a long time without any real opposition. And without exception, they've all become much less desirable places to live. Go for a walk after dark in Chicago or Selma or Baltimore or D.C. sometime if you don't believe that. The black community is leaving itself behind through rampant crime, violence, drug use, and fatherlessness. And also by continuing to vote into office Democrat politicians who promise to make everything worse, and do. So there really are no broken promises, only bad promises faithfully kept. But instead of telling the truth to his audience in Morehouse, Joe Biden lied to them, of course. He also declared that as a nation, we say that we are going to end racism and poverty. Really? When has the nation ever said that? I'm in this nation. I've never said that. Nobody I know has ever made this declaration. Who promised to end racism and poverty? Well, neither racism nor poverty will ever be ended. There isn't a country on the planet at any point throughout history that has eradicated racism or poverty. It's impossible to do so. You have to wonder how long Democrats will buy this messaging. In order to believe Biden's pandering at Morehouse, you'd have to ignore the fact that he's been in the White House for the past several years. You'd also have to ignore the fact that Barack Obama had 8 years in office, at the beginning of which, all the way back in 2008, he promised to build a, quote, more equal, more free, more caring, and more prosperous America. Now Democrats aren't even pretending to want any of that. Instead, they want absolute power. And they intend to obtain that power by lying and by dividing this country as much as possible. Whenever institutions get in their way, Democrats intend to ignore them. And at Morehouse yesterday, Biden made that explicit. Watch.
When the Supreme Court told me I couldn't, I found 2 other ways to do it.
So he's talking there about forgiving student debt, meaning redistributing the debt to taxpayers, which is what forgiving it means, forcing working class Americans to pay the debts of college graduates who on average have a higher net worth than they do. He says, quote, when the Supreme Court told me I couldn't, I found 2 other ways to do it. Nowhere in his speech does Joe Biden even pretend that this is legal. He just celebrates that he got it done to applause from his audience. In 2024, that's what democracy means to Biden and the White House. When they say that they're preserving democracy, they mean that they're enacting Democratic Party agenda items by force without regard to checks and balances. And implementing policy like this only works if a majority of the country despises the other side to the point that they're not willing to play by the rules anymore, the rules otherwise known as the Constitution. And Biden's speech at Morehouse makes it clear, once again, that this is the strategy the White House has chosen for the upcoming election. I'd be lying if I said it wasn't effective. Other than a few Morehouse students who turned their backs on Biden, pretty much everyone in attendance seemed on board with all this. And millions of other Americans see no problem with it either. They can't tolerate Harrison Butker's message emphasizing personal choice and fulfillment because it's the polar opposite of Biden's screed pushing racial animosity and lawlessness. Only a deeply broken country careening towards more division and more chaos would make a scandal out of the former commencement address and cheer for the latter. Now let's get to our 5 headlines. When you're running a business, time is money. That's why I'm so excited to introduce you to Ramp. If you're a finance professional looking for a better way to maximize productivity and cut wasteful spending, then Ramp could be for you. Ramp is a corporate card and spend management software designed to help you save time and put money back in your pocket. With Ramp, you can issue cards to every employee with limits and restrictions. You can also stop wasting time at the end of every month by automating your expense reporting. Ramp's accounting software automatically collects receipts and categorizes your expenses in real time, so you don't have to. You'll never have to chase down the receipt again, and your employees will no longer spend hours submitting expense reports. The time you'll save each month on employee expenses will allow you to close your books 8 times faster. Ramp is so easy to use. You can start in less than 15 minutes, whether you have 5 employees or 5,000. And now get $250 when you join Ramp. Just go to ramp.com/Walsh, ramp.com/Walsh. That's ramp.com/Walsh. Cards issued by Sutton Bank and Celtic Bank, members FDIC. Terms and conditions apply. Here's a report from the Daily Wire. Rap mogul Sean Diddy Combs apologized on Sunday for his violent assault on his then-girlfriend Cassie Ventura after a video was released of the 2016 incident late last week. CNN exclusively obtained video of the incident late last week, which appears to have happened on March 5th, 2016, at the now-closed Intercontinental Hotel in Los Angeles' Century City neighborhood. Video shows Combs running down the hall after Ventura catching her up to her as she waits for an elevator. Combs appears to grab her, throw her to the ground, kick her, attempt to drag her back to the hotel room. She later slowly gets up and picks up a phone on the wall near the elevator as Combs walks back to the hotel room with her bags. He later returns and appears to shove her into a corner before sitting on a nearby chair and throwing an object at her. The release of the video comes after law enforcement officials with the Department of Homeland Security executed raids on 2 homes belonging to Combs in March in connection to an alleged sex trafficking investigation. Los Angeles County District Attorney George Gascon's office said over the weekend that Combs could not be charged for the attack. The DA said, quote, "We're aware of the video that has been circulating online allegedly depicting Sean Combs assaulting a young woman in Los Angeles. We find the images extremely disturbing and difficult to watch. If the conduct depicted occurred in 2016, unfortunately, we will be unable to charge as the conduct would have occurred beyond the timeline where a crime of assault could be prosecuted. As of today, law enforcement has not presented a case related to the attack depicted in the video against Mr. Combs, but we encourage anyone who has been a victim or witness to a crime to report it," et cetera and so forth. Okay, so you heard the description of the video there. It is brutal. He chases her down the hallway, throws her to the ground, kicks her multiple times, drags her. It's a brutal, savage assault. I would show you the video for context here, but YouTube probably won't allow it. We basically can't show you any video that contains any kind of violent behavior, even if it's important content, even if it's like a news story, it's important context for a news story we're discussing. Still can't show you that. We showed you some videos last week of some fights in schools because it was part of a monologue where the videos were, again, important context. And we blurred the videos, and YouTube still hit us for not blurring it enough. That's how absurd it is. Anyway, so if you haven't seen the video here, just keep in mind that this assault was significantly worse than the Ray Rice video from years ago. And the DA in Los Angeles says that they can't prosecute it because it happened in 2016, which raises the question, why didn't you prosecute it in 2016? Like, okay, you're hiding behind the statute of limitations now, but it's on video. So it's on video. We can assume that this happened, that this video has been known about since 2016. It's on security camera footage at a hotel. Obviously, they were reviewing the footage and saw this. So what happened? Did the hotel decide not to report it to police, or did they report it to police and police didn't do anything? There's a greater scandal here that needs to be pursued. And I've read several of the articles about the DA refusing to prosecute, and none of them even acknowledge this question of, why didn't they prosecute at the time? Did they not know about it? And if they didn't know about it, then why was this not reported to them? So they didn't prosecute him at the time. That's no surprise. Sean Combs, and I call him Sean Combs, not Diddy. And this is a separate point, but I really can't stand how most of the media reports and headlines are referring to him as Diddy, which is the worst stage name any rapper has ever come up with. Diddy. Like, it sounds like a Teletubby or something. Diddy. Anyway, Combs has allegedly been involved in all kinds of criminal activity. Human trafficking, sex abuse, murder. Allegedly, quote unquote, allegedly. All of that, and law enforcement never showed the slightest interest in looking into this guy until right now. And this is how it always works. You have a guy living completely above the law, doing whatever he wants, and then one day, it all stops. His time comes and the avalanche buries him. Why has his time come? Why has it been decided that now, after decades of being a scumbag, it's time for Combs to pay the price? Who decided it and why? Well, that's another question, but this is the way it always goes. I do want to play his apology video, and it's kind of funny in a very dark, morbid sort of way. So this is him, which he posted yesterday. This is him apologizing for brutalizing his ex-girlfriend. Listen to what he says.
It's so difficult to reflect on the darkest times in your life. But sometimes you got to do that. I was up. I mean, I hit rock bottom. But I make no excuses. My behavior on that video is inexcusable. I take full responsibility for my actions in that video. I'm disgusted. I was disgusted then when I did it. I'm disgusted now. I went and I sought out professional help. I had to go into therapy. I'm going to rehab. Had to ask God for his mercy and grace. I'm so sorry. But I'm committed to be a better man each and every day. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm truly sorry.
He's committed to being a better man. It's always kind of funny to watch a sociopath pretend to have feelings, and only the most talented ones can pull it off. Combs is not one of the most talented ones. And so what you end up with is something that looks and sounds and feels like a performance. I mean, it literally sounds like he's reading from a script, which he probably is. He says he's truly sorry, except that he's only sorry now, 8 years later, the moment the video is released to the public. That's always a good indication that somebody is not sorry. If they weren't sorry and then weren't sorry and weren't sorry and weren't sorry, and then suddenly they are sorry, the moment everyone finds out about what they did, well, it means that they still aren't sorry. But my favorite part is where he says that he's been in therapy. So this is yet another problem with the therapeutic age that we live in. And you know how I feel about therapy and all the problems with the therapy industry. Here's another one. It gives scumbags an excuse. Not just an excuse, but a way to make themselves into the victims when they do something awful. Well, I'm in therapy to help myself through the trauma I suffer by being a terrible person to everyone around me. I'm traumatized by the bad things that I do actively. What do you need therapy for? Like, what exactly do you need? Do you need your therapist to explain to you that you shouldn't assault your girlfriend? Do you need that? Is that a breakthrough? Did you have a breakthrough in therapy, Combs? Did he? Did you have a therapy breakthrough where you realized, you mean I'm not supposed to brutalize my girlfriend? Now I see so clearly now. No, so you don't need that explained to you. It's not about that. Or is it about coping mechanisms, maybe you would tell us? Well, this was your coping mechanism at the time. Or you need better coping mechanisms so that you don't have to assault people as a coping mechanism. Your therapist has to give you the tools so that you don't feel like you need to assault your girlfriend. Because you're a 54-year-old man, and to this point in your life, somehow you have not developed the ability to modulate or control your own behavior, even the slightest bit. That's what we're supposed to believe. This guy barbarically attacked a woman, and now he needs to go talk it out. He needs to talk about his feelings, because that's going to help, right? Talking about himself more, making it about himself even more. That's what's really going to solve this. No, a therapist isn't going to help you with this. A therapist isn't going to help you because your problem isn't that you lack the psychological tools necessary to not beat up your girlfriend. You already know that you shouldn't beat her up, and you know how to not beat her up. That's pretty easy. But you chose to because you're an evil person who did an evil thing. And many other evil things, allegedly. Therapists will not help you to be not evil. Therapists are not equipped to help anybody with moral defects, which is what your issue is. And when it comes to moral defects, the fix has to begin with actual accountability. Nothing can be fixed if you aren't contrite, if you don't repent. And part of repenting is to accept the consequences of your actions. And if you won't accept the consequences, then you haven't repented. Which means that if he was really sorry, then he would walk into a police station and confess to all of the crimes he's committed, allegedly committed, and then he would accept the sentence for those crimes. And only in doing that have you demonstrated any kind of real repentance, and only then could any kind of reformation even be theoretically possible. But I don't think he's going to be doing that. All right, here's a report from, this is News 10 in Rochester, New York, reporting on more controversy surrounding the illegal immigrants that are flooding into the country. Let's watch this.
Yanidi Pena. She was overcome with emotions. She feels the weight of the world on her right now. It took her and her children a month and a half to get from El Salvador to Mexico, where they crossed the country into Texas. They got moved to New York City, and they were in a housing program that sent them here to Rochester. They arrived in January of this year and lived at the Holiday Inn downtown for 4 months. And they were moved here 3 weeks ago.
Muy traumática.
It's very traumatic.
Porque no creí.
She says it's been quite traumatic. Everything that was told to us to come to Monroe County, to Rochester, hasn't been fulfilled.
Do you like America?
Sí. Pero no Rochester.
But not Rochester?
No. No good Rochester.
Do you want to stay in America?
Yeah.
No, so she doesn't like Rochester. Who does? I mean, in fairness, who likes Rochester? Who wants to live there? Although beggars can't be choosers here, and this is like the most literal application of that saying that you could think of. She says it's very traumatic. It's very traumatic. She's traumatized by being provided free housing and free food. She's traumatized by the fact that she illegally came to a foreign country and was provided free stuff. Now, I will say that the housing they were given apparently didn't have gas or power. That's what they say. There was no gas, there was no power in the house. There were bugs in the refrigerator or something. So not exactly 5-star accommodations. Does that mean that we have something to apologize for as Americans? Does that give this woman a right to be traumatized by it? Absolutely not. You're coming here en masse looking for free stuff. Well, this is what you get. And it's more than you should get, because you should get absolutely nothing for free except a free ride back to where you came from. Although I'd make you pay for that too. If it was up to me, I'd make you pay for that too. Now, the good news is that you don't have to be stuck with that. Like, I wouldn't want to live in a house like that either. I wouldn't want to live in Rochester. I wouldn't want to live in a house that doesn't have gas or power. I don't want to live in a house that has a refrigerator with bugs in it. I don't want any of that. Well, the good news is, like, you're not being forced to live there. You can go back to your home where you came from. And then if you want something better in America, you can come here legally and start from scratch and build a life for yourself. And you can have as good a life as you can possibly build for yourself. If you want to live in a really nice house that has or at least one that has electricity, let's start there. Then if you're a legal citizen of the country, then you can go out and earn that. But when you're demanding free things like this is what you get. And you're not even a citizen. And by the way, it's more than an American would get in the reverse. Okay, if we go illegally to any of these countries where people are coming to us, and we just show up there and say, hey, I'm here, give me a place to live and give me food. For me and my whole family. And my extended relatives too, who I'm bringing along. If we said that, we would get nothing. We would be on the street, is what would happen to us. And if somehow we were given something, we showed up in one of these countries and we said, hey, give me a, I know I don't belong here. I don't live here. I'm not a citizen at all. And I've already broke your laws just by coming here in the first place. But give my whole family a place to live. And then if we actually somehow were given that place to live, and then we raised our hands and said, oh, I'm sorry. No, this is not acceptable. I need something better than this. This isn't good enough. I know that what you've given me is actually still better than what many of the actual citizens of your country have, but I want something above that. I want better living conditions than what millions of your own citizens have. If we said that, our demands would not be heeded. So it doesn't work that way. And it can't work that way here. It's just not possible. It's not feasible. It's not affordable. And it's also not moral. It's not moral to cede to these kinds of demands. Speaking of not moral, here's a Western Standard News has an update to a story that we've been following on this show over the last couple of years. Just reading from this, the Department of Crown Indigenous Relations has confirmed significant spending to try and uncover the heartbreaking truth of potential unmarked graves at the Indian residential school in Kamloops, BC. This is, of course, in Canada. However, despite the allocation of $7.9 million for this purpose, no remains have been recovered, and there has been no public disclosure of how the funds were utilized, says Blacklock's reporter. Caroline Grattan, spokesperson for the department, confirmed the allocation of $7.9 million for various endeavors, including fieldwork, record searches, and securing the residential school grounds. However, she redirected inquiries regarding the specifics of initiatives undertaken by here's the name of the First Nation tribe, Tk'emlúps te Secwepemc. Secwepemc? SECWPEMC. But you can't put MC together like that. Well, anyway, that's the name of the tribe. While the department has not released financial accounts under the Access to Information Act, the First Nation has also remained tight-lipped about the utilization of the funds. In a statement, they reiterated their focus on the scientific work required, but declined to discuss the $7.9 million allocation. The 2021 funding was designated to document the heartbreaking truth, quote unquote, about unmarked burials at residential schools, as outlined in a 2022 department briefing note. Despite this, no tangible progress has been made, leaving the fate of the allocated funds undisclosed. Okay, so basically the update here is that we heard about these mass graves at the residential schools in Canada, this conspiracy of genocide against the native peoples that allegedly had been undertaken, and a bunch of churches were burned in response to this, and everybody accepted it. The media accepted it. Everyone accepted it. The Pope accepted it as a fact and apologized for it. They allocated millions of dollars to go, dig up these mass graves and figure out what happened and uncover evidence that this genocide had occurred. And here we are a couple of years later, all of this money spent. It's not clear how it was spent or who got it or who it was given to and how they used it. But still now, no evidence. No evidence of any mass graves. No human remains have been found at all. Period. So this will go down as one of the greatest and most destructive hoaxes of all time. This hoax about the mass graves at the residential schools. It's a hoax. I mean, we can say that now. Because when you make a claim like that and you say there are mass graves, genocide, and then years pass and you're not able to come up with any evidence at all to support that, well, then we can call it a hoax. Obviously, it's a hoax. And it's a hoax that, again, led to dozens of churches being burned to the ground, along with many other consequences. Nobody will be held accountable for it either. We know that. And how did the hoax work? How did it catch on? They claim that, there were all of these mass graves because the schools had been, I guess, murdering native children en masse or something. There was never any evidence, never any reason to believe it. Plenty of reason for skepticism from the very beginning. Never had anything to prove the claim, but so many people just bought it outright. Without even like a raised eyebrow, right? Like very few people even said, wait a second. What do you mean mass graves? So they just slaughtering like hundreds or thousands of Native children, and this was happening. Like, why should we believe that happened? Very few people even did that. It's not even like, when the claim is first made and you hear the claim, you might not feel comfortable just declaring, oh, that's not true. Because you don't have you don't have evidence one way or another. You're just hearing about this. And so that's fine. But there should at least be skepticism. There should at least be like, hang on a second. Let's slow your roll a bit here. Let's get some evidence that this happened before we say anything else about it. Can we get some evidence that this thing really occurred? But not a lot of people did that. They bought it hook, line, and sinker because the media told them to. They bought it because even in the information age, the media still has the power to shape people's perception of reality to an extraordinary degree. And I think they bought it also because it plays on that deep-seated guilt that Western people have about their own history and their ancestry, and the fact that they exist to begin with. This is why I harp on this so much. You hear me ranting all the time about the heroism and courage of the people who settled this land. And when I say this land, I talk about I'm talking about the Americas generally. And in a sane society, it wouldn't be necessary to talk about, to insist upon it so fervently. But in our society, so many people have been conditioned to hate their own ancestors and even to hate what their ancestors did to provide them with the lives that they have. And so people are just walking around with this guilt, white liberals in particular, and in Canada, that's like all you have are white liberals, walking around with this guilt all the time. And then when the media comes along and says, oh, well, there were these mass graves, all of these guilt-plagued white liberals say, well, of course there are. But of course my ancestors did that too. What else did they do? And it's just it's an insane sort of dynamic. And that's why we have to counteract it. Not simply by saying, oh, well, you shouldn't walk around guilt-plagued, or not by saying, as many conservatives will respond to the white guilt stuff by saying, well, hey, you shouldn't feel guilty because it's not your fault what your ancestors did. So you shouldn't walk around with that guilt. And that's true. Like, to feel guilty over stuff that your ancestors did, it doesn't make any sense, even if they did bad stuff, because you didn't do it. But it doesn't go far enough. It's not just that you shouldn't feel guilty. In fact, you should be proud of your ancestors and the fact that they came here and they settled this land. You should be saying, yes, I'm glad they came here. And they fought this long-running conflict with the native tribes, and they won that conflict. I'm glad they did. They were heroes. That should be the message. Not just a defensive posture of, it's not my fault, don't blame me. But no, I'm happy. I'm happy that I'm here. I'm happy my ancestors came here. They were heroic people, and they should be admired. That should be the message. All right, a couple of weeks ago, I told you about this reality show, Alone Australia, where a bunch of woke leftists are sent out into the wilderness to survive, and hilarity unintentionally ensues. And I said how the show, along with everything else we've seen from the country over the past 5 years or so, has really changed my opinion of Australia. And I realize now that Australia is a pretty lame country, tragically lame. I used to hold it in such high regard, but now I don't. And these comments have apparently caused quite a stir in Australia. First, the Daily Mail Australia reported on them. We talked about that. And now we have another article. This is from news.com in Australia. Here's the headline. American podcaster brands Australia lamest country on earth in bizarre rant. An American podcaster has branded Australia lame and weak after going on an emotional anti-woke rant online. Now, already there's a problem here because anyone who listens to this show knows that I'm prone to going on rants. That's true. That's basically the whole show. But I don't usually do emotional rants. I don't do emotions in general most of the time. And I certainly didn't get emotional about Australia being lame. I mean, yeah, it's a little disappointing. I'm not emotional, but it's not my country. I'm just telling you what's going on. That's all. Anyway, let's continue. Quote, an American podcaster has lashed out Australia in an emotional rant, branding us lame and weak in a recent video. Matt Walsh is a right-wing commentator whose favorite pastime is getting his knickers in a knot about people being woke and then whinging about it on the internet. In one of his latest rants, he appears to have taken issue with Australia, revealing his opinion of the country that has plummeted in recent years. He said in a recent video posted to TikTok, before COVID, I thought Australia was, first of all, an absolute hellscape where poisonous spiders rain from the sky. That part is true. Anyway, they quote me some more. I'm not going to read back my own quotes. Walsh is known for spewing a strong anti-transgender and anti-LGBTQ plus rhetoric. His 2022 film, What is a Woman?, was heavily criticized by transgender groups and activists, with the magazine Current Affairs describing it as a feature-length attack on transgender people that accuses them of being delusional about reality and posing a threat to women and children. The snippet of Walsh's Australia whinge that was shared on TikTok forms part of a longer YouTube video in which he speaks about the woke Australian version of the survival show Alone. And anyway, it goes on. Okay, so look, I didn't realize that my comments about Australia would cause such heartache in the country of Australia. I didn't realize that you guys care so much about what I think of you. The fact that there have been multiple headlines in Australian media about my comments on Australia is surprising to me and also incredibly pathetic, especially because you'd think that there's plenty of other things happening in Australia that you'd be paying attention to instead of paying attention to me. I mean, you've got, I don't know, kangaroos and shit down there. You've got venomous snakes falling out of your ceilings. You've got crocodiles lurking in your front yard, eating your dogs. Spiders the size of Buicks just like walking down the street. So I just don't understand how, in the midst of all that, you could find the time to care about what I say. And as I said before, I don't understand how you can live in that environment and still be weak, woke little wimps. But here we are. I mean, I don't get it, but that's what's happening. And I say this as someone who, again, always liked Australia, at least from afar. I was a big fan of Steve Irwin. I love the Bloomin' Onion from Outback Steakhouse. So I know a lot about Australian culture. I'm really steeped in Australian culture. And that's why it pains me to see what it has become. So here's what I'll say. And this is the last thing I'll say about Australia for now. And I think, and I'm not, I'm not backtracking. I'm not one to apologize, but I do want to in a certain sense, I want to make amends with Australia. And I don't want, you guys are fragile enough down there. I don't want to cause any more pain and heartache for you. So I think there's only one solution. This is kind of my compromise. I think Australia needs to be invaded. For its own sake, we need to invade Australia and conquer it. And based on what I've seen, that'll only take about 3 or 4 hours, and the whole job will be done. And what we'll do, this is my proposal, just my proposal, is we'll round up all the woke, lame Australians, and we will drive them inland to the interior, and we'll set up like a reservation for them that they can live on. And then the cool Australians will be liberated. And we'll send them to go, live in New Zealand, which is basically Australia, but colder. It's like Australia refrigerated or something, from what I understand. And they can live there because nobody's in New Zealand right now anyway. And the rest, and then you're saying, well, what do we do with the rest of the Australian continent? My suggestion is that we get back to Australia's roots. We convert it back to a prison colony. And we'll start shipping our prisoners to Australia and, put it to use. Because that was Australia's heyday. That was Australia in its prime, is when it was just where you had shiploads of criminals, you dropped them off on the shore of Australia, and you say, good luck, we'll see you never. And then you sail away. And I think that's What we should do, it's kind of a do-over sort of situation, a reset. I'm not going to say a great reset, but it's a reset for Australia. And level all the cities. We'll destroy the cities. And we'll do that safely. I'm not advocating that we harm anybody. We clear everybody out first. We make sure we do. And then we level all the cities and send the woke ones to a reservation in the desert, ship the other ones to New Zealand, and then we start sending our prisoners there. That's my plan. That's how we fix this thing. And that's how much I care. I care about Australia so much that I'm willing for it to be conquered in order to fix it. And the great thing is that we all know, based on recent history, that when America conquers a country, it fixes everything. It makes everything better. And I'd like to see that for all of you down in Australia. If you owe back taxes or still have unfiled returns, that can really weigh on your mind, especially when the IRS has become more determined than ever. Their chief data and analytics officer revealed that the IRS is focused on an enforcement project with an average return on investment of about $6 for every $1 spent. They're targeting individuals and businesses that currently owe back taxes or haven't yet filed their returns. Tax Network USA, the nation's leading tax relief firm, knows the tax code and will fight for you. With a record of negotiating over $1 billion in tax relief for their clients, their team is knowledgeable in handling any type of tax issue. Whether you owe $10,000 or $10 million, they can help. Even if you don't have all your personal or business records from over the years, they can get you filed up to date. Facing the IRS without a professional is not a smart move. Contact Tax Network USA for the best strategic advice to help reduce or even eliminate your tax debt. Call today at 1-800-245-6000 or visit their website at tnusa.com/Walsh. They'll give you a free private consultation on how you can settle your tax debt today. That's tnusa.com/Walsh. Get ready for a Daily Wire backstage event you're not going to want to miss. Join Ben Shapiro, Michael Knowles, Andrew Klavan, the God King, Jeremy Boring, and of course yours truly, Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central to watch for free live on Daily Wire Plus. We're going behind the scenes and beyond the headlines, and Jeremy Boring has a very special announcement that you'll hear about on Backstage First. Trust me, when the rest of the world hears about it, it's going to make a lot of noise. We've been busy. It's been a minute since we've all been together, so there's a lot to cover. Watch the show live exclusively on Daily Wire Plus Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central. You don't want to miss this. Now let's get to our daily cancellation. As mentioned at the top of the show, we have now entered the second week of an outrage cycle centered around an NFL kicker who gave a speech to Catholic students where he articulated some very basic Catholic teachings. I've already explained why this outrage is extremely stupid and totally baseless and mostly fake. Worst of all, though, it has brought out the most insufferable people on the planet. This steaming pile of fake outrage has attracted the loudest and most irritating sorts of flies, metaphorically speaking, metaphorical flies. Enter Stefanie Hills, a former cheerleader for the Kansas City Chiefs. She has put out two very viral videos attacking Harrison Butker for his speech. Headlines on the New York Post and Yahoo Sports tell us that she went scorched earth with a, quote, scathing takedown of the kicker. And it is true that she is scorching something, but it isn't the earth so much as the eyes and eardrums of anyone who watches one of her videos, which is what I'm about to force all of you to do, just like you were hoping. Brace yourselves, here it is.
Hey, Harrison. You know, we have several things in common. First and foremost, until a few months ago, we were both employed by the Kansas City Chiefs. I cheered you on for 6 years straight. And with that, I would assume we went to the same PR training. But since all of that obviously left your brain when you went to go give that speech, I thought I'd be a good coworker. Share my notes. Let's get started. These are fake. Biggest takeaway is you now represent $1 billion organization. You are no longer just Harrison Butker. You are now Harrison Butker, who plays for the Kansas City Chiefs. And anything you say or do that doesn't align with that brand, scissoring just like the lesbians you hated in that video, will be grounds for termination. Not entirely sure if that last part is gonna apply to you, but I guess we'll find out. A quick minute to dissect some of the language in your speech referring to abortion, IVF, euthanasia, and surrogacy as degenerate culture values. Do you see how that maybe doesn't align with the brand COVID fiasco? Now, I would assume you know what fiasco means, but just in case you don't, you're referring to the pandemic as a humiliating failure. You know, we had an entire PR training on COVID, bro. We weren't supposed to talk about it.
That was rough. That was very difficult, but we endured it. We got through it together. It probably felt like I was exposing you to far more of that radiation poisoning than was necessary, but I needed to show you all that in order to make the point that I'll get to in a moment. And that was not the entire thing. She goes on that way with that grating tone and aggressively smug and unjustifiably self-satisfied demeanor for like 3 minutes. I cut it off halfway through, which was an act of mercy on my part. Now, she did record a follow-up after that video racked up 4 million views. And you really don't need to see the follow-up, but here it is anyway.
I put on a blazer and my finest jewelry in case any of the national news wants to use this and air it without my consent. My video dressing my favorite former coworker, Harrison Butker, has popped off. And I'm about it, because now I am a voice for the people that he attacked. And since the mainstream media is going to use whatever content they want, I thought I might as well dress up and give him a formal speech.
Okay, we'll just cut it off. It goes on and on and on. And that's enough of that. A man can only take so much. Of course, she's acting like she doesn't want the media to report on the videos that she posts on a public platform, which is why she made a second video addressing the media titled, Hey Media. Because that's what you do when you don't want the media to notice you. Hey media, hey over here, hey media, hey look at me media, look at me. Hey, why are you looking at me? Stefanie seems to be conducting some sort of scientific experiment to see what happens when you combine all of the most unappealing personality traits into one individual, which is why she's added disingenuousness to the pile. The results of the experiment are unfortunately not as dramatic as you'd hope. It turns out that a human being with every negative personal characteristic does not collapse like a dying star and turn into a black hole that consumes everything around it so that even light cannot escape its gravitational pull. Instead, they just make super lame TikTok videos. And as for those videos, there are a few things that Stefanie doesn't seem to understand, a few points of confusion. So let me clarify them for her. First of all, she says that Harrison went to all the same meetings as her and is subject to all of the same requirements as her because they're quote-unquote co-workers. But that is not a safe assumption. He's an actual player on the team. Now, I know she probably didn't understand what was happening on the field while she danced on the sidelines, but so I'm going to fill in the blanks here. Harrison Butker is one of the most accurate field goal kickers in NFL history. The team has won games, lots of games, including playoff games, including this most recent Super Bowl, where he set 2 Super Bowl records in the same game because of his kicks. He went 11 for 11 in this last playoff run. 11 for 11 means that he kicked 11 times and he made all 11 of them. So the point is that he is an indispensable part of the team. And she is, or was, an interchangeable cheerleader on the sideline. So he's not getting fired for this, even if she would have been fired for doing the same. And I don't know if she would or not. And you could call that patriarchy if you want, but it's more that, again, the team depends on him to win games. They don't depend on Stefanie for literally anything at all. She could be replaced with one of those inflatable wavy arm things outside of a car dealership, and the product on the field would not suffer at all. In fact, it would probably be an improvement. Second, let's note the argument that she's making here. She isn't even attempting to explain why he's wrong about anything he said in the speech. She can't explain that. She doesn't understand the issues well enough to make any sort of coherent argument. Instead, she insists that he's hurting the brand and blatantly defying the regulations set down by the Kansas City Chiefs HR department. She's playing out some kind of strange fantasy where she's the HR director condescendingly lecturing Harrison for not following the employee handbook. And I'm afraid that this says much more about her than it does about him. She has very proudly announced to the world that she thinks the brand and PR considerations should trump intellectual integrity and open dialogue. Now, I'm not surprised she feels that way, given everything else about her, but it is somewhat surprising that she would announce that to the world without realizing that it makes her the bad guy. Apparently, her greatest dream in life is to be an HR rep in a pantsuit, firing somebody for expressing unapproved opinions. And the problem is that HR departments across the country are filled with women just like her, the type who relish the power that they have over other people's lives, however limited that power might be. Now, the difference is that they actually have the power. She's playing pretend HR rep like a child playing house, which is maybe the saddest display I have ever seen. Now, third, finally, a little bit of a personal note. And I say this because I'm concerned about Stefanie. I have no ill will towards her whatsoever. I want her to live a happy and healthy life. I don't want her to die alone with only her cats to comfort her. And that's why I have to inform her that men are totally repulsed by smug, condescending attitudes in women. Like, this is the personality trait that men, all men everywhere, find the most off-putting. Okay, you might think that it's funny or cute or endearing, but it's not. It's disgusting. We recoil from it instinctively. Our aversion to it is deep and visceral. So if you're a woman and you want to turn off as many men as possible, just be sarcastic, smug, and condescending. And it's not just men. People in general find that kind of personality to be extremely gross and repugnant. Although perhaps I shouldn't really call it a personality. It is indeed the absence of personality. You know, she's very animated and makes lots of exaggerated gestures and facial expressions. But underneath all of that is a bitterness and narcissism and shallowness that the histrionics cannot sufficiently compensate for. Now, I'm sure that she has people in her life that tell her that she's funny and extroverted and she has a big personality, but that's because they don't have the heart to tell her that what they really mean to say is that she is the most annoying person they've ever encountered. And her patronizing attitude fills them with a deep disgust. They won't tell her that, so I have to. And I hope she takes it to heart. In the meantime, Stefanie, the former Kansas City Chiefs cheerleader, is today canceled. That'll do it for the show today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Talk to you tomorrow. Have a great day. Godspeed.
Today on The Ben Shapiro Show, Iran's president is dead in a helicopter crash. The International Criminal Court tries to bring charges against the Prime Minister of Israel, and Americans remain dour on the economy even as Joe Biden panders for black votes in Morehouse College. That's today on The Ben Shapiro Show. Give it a listen.